I'm Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm going to be starting a new series on my YouTube channel, and it's called Writing 101. So basically what this will be about different things to do with writing a novel, writing poetry, writing scripts, writing anything. I want to give you the best writing advice that I possibly can, and I've done a lot of research before I've given this advice, but please bear in mind that it's just my advice and it's not, the Bible. It's not the word that you just have to keep by all the time while you're writing. So I've asked a couple of people who are into writing what they would most like to know about writing, and the first message that I got was how to write well. I decided to interpret that as, what should we do before we start writing a novel, or writing anything for that matter, to make it the best writing that it possibly can be. So these are going to be some general tips that you might want to abide by before you start thinking about writing. And the first one is going to be grammar. Now, grammar is actually pretty important in your writing. Lots of people don't want to look into grammar and punctuation because it's learning rules and it's kind of tedious, but especially if English is not your first language, and occasionally even when it is, grammar can be pretty troublesome. I would like to present to you the commonly known issue of the comma. The first sentence, let's eat Bob, cannibalism, and the second sentence, let's eat, comma, Bob. Let's all eat together. So basically you can see that the grammar changes the way the sentence is in general and its whole meaning. So grammar is important, especially if you just want to make things really easy when you write. The more you learn grammar, the easier it's going to be when you're writing, the more fluent it will come, the less you have to think about it. My advice is, if you're really just getting started with your grammar, is to start writing short stories first, because it's easier to read through short stories, check your grammar, instead of writing a whole novel and then having to go through and check your grammar through all of that writing. I'll leave a couple of links below to places that have great grammar websites where they explain rules simply, easily, and you'll just get it in no time at all. Second thing that I would advise you to do if you want to start writing is read. I know everybody says this, read, 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 and what if you hate reading? Well, the reason why reading is so beneficial is because you can just read everything. You can read fantasy, you can read classics, you can read young adult, you can read science fiction, and by reading all of this you can first of all know what you like in a novel and what you don't like in a novel, so you can know what to put and not to put into your novel, and you can also just get great examples of building up in scenes, building up tension, foreshadowing, symbolism, so many brilliant examples in literature and books in general. Of course, you should always try and find a book to read that you like, and you should also learn your own reading style. Some people, while they're writing a fantasy novel, just like to read fantasy because then they get a whole lot of ideas, it inspires them. But other people, while they're writing their own fantasy novel, want to read anything but fantasy so that they don't get the same ideas of those other novels in their work. You really have to find what works for you, and the only way to find that is by trial and error, just trying it out and seeing which one works best for you. But reading is vitally important, because if you don't read, you're not going to be able to write to the best of your ability. Third thing you've got to do before you start your novel is find the time and find a place. Now, I know that a lot of people go and start writing a novel with the misconception that writing is super easy. You just write, it floods out of your fingers, the words just come to you, you're like, I don't know, Stephen King, you just flash all these words out and it's brilliant and lovely and done. You're done, your novel's done. But the truth is, it's not actually like that. Writing takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, perseverance, and if you can't find the right place to write where you can be either with a community of writers or by yourself, so you actually have the time to do it in peace and quiet, it can be pretty hard to write. So what you need to do is you need to find a time. Do you write better in the night, in the morning, in the middle of the day? When do you have the time in your busy schedule to fit writing in? And secondly, you need to know where you want to write. Are you going to be writing in your bedroom, in your office, outside in a nice quiet secluded park? Is there a writer's meeting that you're going to be writing at? You need to know where and when, and you need to make sure you schedule enough time for you to actually get your novel finished within your own personal set deadline. We'll talk about writing, how much to write at a certain seated time where you just have time to write, in another video, but you really do need to plan ahead and know when and where you are going to be writing. Next thing you're going to need if you're going to be writing is an idea, because what on earth are you going to be writing about? Don't stress if an idea doesn't come to you immediately. Most people have an idea before they decide they want to write a novel. But if you don't, just read some writing prompts on the internet. There's plenty of places where you can find tons of writing prompts. I'll link below 1 or 2 that have great writing prompts, and you can just take your time in finding an idea. And the second thing that you should always do within finding an idea is know the stereotypes. There are plenty and plenty of stereotypes in novels. For example, let's just take young adult, because I just know so much about young adult. But in young adult you have love triangles, you have insta-love where the characters just fall in love immediately. You have a younger sibling dying. I know that seems not like it should be a stereotype, but it's happening a lot in books lately. There's so many different stereotypes in books that just happen over and over again, and they're just common tropes. The thing about it is, not all stereotypes are necessarily bad stereotypes. Everybody loves the stereotypical plot where they're living their life, something tragic happens, things get better, it looks like it can't get better, and then it does, and that's the end. Everybody seems to like that kind of stereotypical storyline. Some people really like when there's this girl, she's surviving on her own, and then a knight in shining armour comes and she doesn't even know that she needs rescuing until she is rescued. This can happen in a fantasy, literally, or it can also happen in a contemporary when it comes to emotions and things like that. So there's so many different stereotypes, and you need to know them, because some of them you're going to want to include in your novel, and some you're just going to keep your hands far, far away from. And as well as that, when you have a stereotype, if you want to get readers to read your book, sometimes it's good to include 1 or 2 stereotypes, but you can be original within a stereotype. You won't know how to do that until you know them. So look into your stereotypes, and maybe some ideas will come as well. The next thing that is very important you do before you start writing is research. I know this might sound a bit ridiculous. If you're writing a story set in Britain and you live in Britain, why on earth would you need to do any research? Well, because even though you live somewhere, it doesn't necessarily mean you know everything about that place. And you might not know everything about the situation that you're writing about. I've written a novel which is set in China, and I've only been to China once. I've needed to do a whole lot of research to understand the culture, the language, the setting, to describe what it will probably look like, how it would feel to be there. And then as well as that, I'm writing a story that has to do with sweatshops and factory working, and I've never worked in a factory or been to a sweatshop. So you're going to need to look into what it's like to be in that character situation. You might be mentioning different cultures or different characters fleetingly, but you're still going to want to do some research so that you understand what you're writing about. Because yes, you can write about something that doesn't exist, that you totally are unfamiliar with, but there's always something you can research so that you can become more familiar with it and make the writing easier. Final tip I'm going to give you before I finish off this video is to find somebody to write with. Now that doesn't mean that every time you want to write you have to sit down opposite this person and go, okay, we're going to start writing together now, and when they need to go, you have to stop writing. That's not what I mean. You need to have someone who actually cares about the fact that you are writing a novel. That means someone who's going to badger you like, hey, have you done your writing for today? Or, how's your writing going? How's your story going? Have you changed this? Can I read it? Things like that. You need someone who's really going to care about your writing. Now, lots of people are a bit shy when they start writing. They don't want to show it to their friends or their family or whoever is close to them. And I can understand that. Sharing your work, your writing, is a pretty big deal. But something that you can do is find an online writing partner. Now, I know a lot of people are afraid of meeting people online because they feel like they could take away their name, they could get information from them and basically ruin them on the internet. But that's not what I mean. I am part of the Young Writers Society, which is called YWS, to be simple about it. I'll link it below, and basically it's a writing website where you have a username, you have a password, you don't have to give out your identity in the slightest, and yet you can still discuss with writers about different writing problems you could face. And on that site you'll be able to easily find someone who cares about your writing and who will message you once a day within the site saying, have you written yet? Or do you need any help writing this scene? And it doesn't have to give away any personal details at all, so it's perfectly safe. And of course it has to be, seeing as it's for young writers from 13 and above. But adults can be on there too to help with their writing. So find someone who really cares about your writing and is willing to push you along when you need a little bit of a helping hand. And here you have it. These are the 6 tips I would give you before you should start writing to be able to write your novel well and perhaps a little bit easier than if you hadn't done them before. So don't forget. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next week with another video, and hopefully I'll be making another Writing 101 video very soon. Please like, share, comment and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and let me know below what are some videos about writing, any questions that you have about writing that you'd like me to answer in one of these videos, and I'll try to get to that theme as soon as possible. See you next week. Goodbye.